I'm very excited to speak to you today about, so you can see it, the 3 stages of continuous vulnerability discovery. Now, for short, I'm going to call it the 3-stage play. It's actually a strategy I've been working on at HackerOne since around about June, July this year. We've worked with some real-life customers on this. We've implemented it. We're now progressing through the stages. So this talk is very much pitched at existing customers and those thinking about coming on board. You know, it's a 1, 2, 3 stage play. Whether or not you're a bug bounty user or you don't use this at all, you'll hopefully see exactly how you can implement this strategy as we go along. So first, a little bit about me. Who am I? My name's Chris Campbell. I'm one of the solution engineers at HackerOne. I started in cybersecurity at Darktrace as a solutions engineer there. That sometimes gets a mixed reaction from the audience, depending on your own experience with Darktrace. But I had some fun there, implementing their NDR solution specifically. I then moved on to work at the Home Office. So I was a G6 security architect, and I was traditionally designing identity and access management solutions. So when we were designing that, I also used to fall into the bracket of, unfortunately, commissioning and scoping pen tests. So a very mixed experience there. And then recently, I am also studying at Imperial College towards an MBA. So quick live poll, just to see that everyone's still awake from lunch. I know it was pretty good. I see some custard tarts going on here as well. So what security processes or tools do you currently employ with your code development stage of the SDLC? So if anyone wants to volunteer, if anyone's particularly proud, yes, please.
SonarQube.
SonarQube, brilliant. And how's that going?
It's good.
It's good? Out of 10?
7.
7? Oh, okay, yeah. Room for improvement, but overall quite happy. Yes, please.
GitLab Ultra, we've also checked out the Terra format.
Okay.
And a few other things.
So that's a GitHub proprietary tool. Have they built that?
No, so GitHub Ultra has inbuilt SaaS security components in that, and then
Interesting.
on top of that.
Can I ask you, so did you implement it, was it you who brought it into the organization? How do your developers feel about it?
We don't have any developers. This is all infrastructure as code. So this is
Okay.
operations.
So your ops guy, I mean, how do your infrastructure team feel about it? Is it useful?
Yes. It's taken a while to get.
Yeah, quite a steep learning curve. Okay, good. What about anyone else? Have we got SAST? I presume we've got some SCA users as well, some DAST maybe? Some nods? Yeah, okay. Well, this one view summarizes a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. So I like to think of this view as almost a shared responsibility model. Our customers right now very much own the development and automated testing side of the SDLC. But everything after that now at HackerOne, we are able to help you with auditing your code base, with penetration testing as a service, and of course, bug bounty. I'm not going to touch that because I didn't realize that was wobbly. Apologies. So why would we think of it like this? Well, obviously, the earlier on in the SDLC we find bugs, the easier they are to fix, as everyone knows. But I like to think of this in terms of volume as well. We should be eliminating the most bugs the higher up we are in this model. So you should be building code securely by design. In an ideal world, you're going to build rock solid code with no bugs in it. Okay, great. But what do we have next? Well, we have automated testing to try and catch what our developers have missed or potentially accidentally introduced in code. So if the customer owns these first 2 rows, HackerOne can now come in. And I had a conversation with our founders about this. When I first pitched this idea to a customer and they seemed to like it, I went to Alex Rice, our co-founder, and said, if this idea is successful, it might actually reduce the emphasis on bug bounty. Is that okay? He said, well, I mean, our customers more secure? I said, absolutely. If this is implemented properly, we should be finding only the very novel and elusive bugs in our last line of defense of bug bounty. So here we are. Some people are viewing this model as a means to actually front load your security process so that you're not relying on bug bounty. In fact, bug bounty becomes this final stage of defense that's a catch-all. Earlier on now, I want to go through my code, find the bugs there, utilize our utilize our crowdsourced approach for bug hunting in code, running pen testing frequently throughout the year, and then ultimately, when we've launched all of our code, it's down through the SDLC, we can actually use bug bounty to cover all assets. Some of you are probably sick to death of seeing the DevSecOps infinity loop. I've just put it up here because it's quite a nice way to visualize this. So when you're coding and building that code within your SCM, you can run code security audit. When you're ready to release and you're at that UAT stage, you've compiled your applications, we can pen test. When that application has been released, it's passed all the checks of the pen test, and it's out in the wild, it's operating, it's being monitored, you'll be running HackerOne Bug Bounty continuously throughout the year. Okay, so I'm really excited today because we've actually never spoken about code security audit at a conference before. This product was launched in July of this year, and it came around through the acquisition of a former company called Pull Request, who we acquired, and all of their team came and joined us. And they were traditionally a pure code review solution using the crowdsourced approach to fit very nicely with HackerOne. But we've thought, how can we actually build this in a way that's meaningful to our customers? I mean, we are in the business of bug hunting, so it seems natural that we can now actually use that same solution to find bugs in code. So stage one, now again, I'm going to explain this linearly because to me that makes sense, but I don't want you to think of this in a way that, if you've already built your applications or indeed you're looking after legacy code, you can't start here. You may be already running a bug bounty. Well, how can we come back and actually look at the core of your assets? So just to frame this, when we think about code audit, you saw Laurie use this slide earlier. So we have a typical CI/CD pipeline, someone's creating a new branch, they're running through automated tests, and they're going to hopefully find some bugs, fix that. They may or may not request a review. Depends how big your team is, depends how mature you are. So HackerOne does actually have that review module that Laurie mentioned earlier, but what I want to talk about specifically is code audit. So the easiest way to think about this is you've already done the development of your code. This is not an on-demand model. This is actually a point-in-time check to review either a subset or the entirety of your code base. Whether you have 100,000 lines of code, whether you have 5 million. Now, we've got a lot of use cases coming up, actually every single day now, for this. And yes, this is a point-in-time check, but when was the last time your entire code base was audited? Doesn't happen very often. Now, some teams do have a very mature internal security process within their SDLC, and they might have great tools in there. I know we have multiple tools in the audience, but when was the last time the entirety of the code base was reviewed? Right? Pretty exciting. So unfortunately, I can't name this customer of ours specifically, but a major game developer, they had a code base of over 20 years. They came to us in July to ask us, listen, we love Bug Bounty. They're a power user of Bug Bounty. They've actually run Pentest as well. And this is them coming back to say, hey, listen, we have a huge legacy code base. It's complicated. It's split across repositories. How can you guys help us? So in the same way we do with Bug Bounty and all of our other services, we will crowdsource experts within each individual field. So let's say you need Node.js experts or TypeScript, C++, C#, whatever it is you're using. In this instance, we found 7 security professionals within our community, of our code review community, and the customer identified 5 million lines of code. Now, for some of you, that'll sound enormous. For those of you, you're laughing at that. Easy, we have 20. What blew my mind, and actually this report was released in September, they had an elongated testing window because they were a beta customer. we found 80 vulnerabilities existing in code. Now, a lot of the folks in this room have probably played their games on their PC, their Xbox, their PlayStation. As I said, it's a global provider. 13 of those 80 vulnerabilities had a CVSS score between 7 and 10. So we had critical vulnerabilities in there that millions of people have touched. So again, probably for understandable reasons, we can't go into too much detail. But this is showing you the level of results that we found. Now, if you're a bug bounty user, you'll know how, 80 bugs in a bug bounty with 13 highs and crits, that's going to cost a lot of money. That's going to cost a serious amount of money. So what we're saying here, by front loading, they actually found 80 bugs for a fixed fee, one-time check to audit the entire code base. So again, I wanted this to be a little bit of a practical session, and in my day job, I'm demoing our product all the time. So let's look at some examples. Now, there's a lot of text on screen. We don't need to go into the full detail. Some of you will be familiar with this format. This is just like a normal vulnerability report, except it's come through the process of a code security audit. So what's happening here? Well, someone is using the subroutine to log passwords in a plain text file. They're utilizing the auth API, but they are specifically allowing the change of the password itself to be logged. Now, why should we care about this? Well, you can see, just like any good vulnerability report, we have our summary, the code that we've actually looked at within your code base, the recommendation of what to do, in this case, remove the line from the implementation, why we should do this. We've got reference here to the OWASP. And then ultimately the impact. How do I go around triaging a vulnerability? I need to know, what does this mean to my users? In this case, actually, if you think about a chained attack, if I can update a password, I would probably need to have privileged access already, right? I'm dealing with the auth API. I would probably need to have privileged access already, but let's say I do. Why would I make this easy for an attacker? Why on earth would I be logging this? So to me, this has actually been a legacy code that's probably been forgotten about, but one of our code reviewers found this. This is a real-life redacted code audit that we actually found in one of our projects. So moving on from that, I think quite a nice complementary example from this. Again, unfortunately, this is real. We found a hard-coded salt within code. Why was the user doing this? We don't know. Is there anyone still in the security team or the development team who even remembers why this was done? Chances are probably not. So again, is this best practice? I can, as a reviewer, I come from a computer science background, I could see this. In 2 seconds, you say, you've hard-coded a salt, why have you done this? It's not good practice, right? Again, I was speaking to, actually, I think it was John earlier, your static code analysis tool could have found this. Well, it probably could have, and if hopefully you've got a good one, it will. But what is your team supposed to do with that? An automated feedback, great, don't do this. Why? And I think this is one of the best things about code audit, because on the assumption that you are working with an experienced code reviewer, a code reviewer with security background, they are going to tell you, actually, I know this looks good and it might be easy, but really should you be using it in this way? How should you actually be passing in the salt? What's the best design practice here? So I like to think of code review as having two strong functions. Number one, finding bugs introduced directly in code. On line 145, you hard-coded a salt. But also, just with the previous example, is this the correct design pattern to use? It's not technically wrong. It's not introducing an OAuth top 10, but should you be doing it like this? And so when we have our strong recommendations and impacts here, I would like to start seeing security teams use this to actually level up in terms of their own coding, their own development. So who's doing this? And I mentioned earlier that we have, earlier last year, acquired Pull Request. Pull Request came with a community of 600 senior and vetted software engineers. You saw an example earlier in Laurie's talk of Hasim. He had 15 years, he was AWS, he was Google. And this, of course, came out of San Francisco. So every single software engineer within our code review community has been background checked, security checked, and they've actually been video interviewed by one of our team as well. So I want to make this very clear. This is not the same group of people that we would normally use with a bug bounty. This is a distinct and separate community who are now part of the HackerOne platform. What do they cover? You can see a very nice breakdown here. Of course, mobile and web coming up at the top there, API technology, of course. Everything you would expect. Our head of product, Dan Mateer, would always say, if you come across a niche example, so some of you, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with Kotlin. Kotlin with a K, this gentleman here. I was in development for 9 years. I'd never heard of it, to my shame. And I said, can we help them with this? And he said, I will find a reviewer within our community, and of course he did. So whatever your stack, however niche you think it is, however complex you think it is, I would ask you, is it as complex as a 5 million line of code legacy game engine? Chances are probably not, but it will be different. So every single code security audit project is different, and we can find the resources to review that well. Okay, so that's code security audit stage 1. Stage 2 is pen test as a service. And pen testing is quite close to my heart. As I said, I was a security architect, and I used to have to commission pen tests. I had 2 approved providers at the British Home Office. Some of you will know their names. And it wasn't a lot of fun, right? I had 6-week lead times. I had to work with product to tell me their plans for release 3 months in advance, which is pretty hard to do in the British Civil Service. So what have we done at HackerOne? Here we are in stage 2. Now, HackerOne is completely flipped pen testing, as you know, on its head, right? We are a pen testing as a service provider. The average HackerOne pen test will find 13 vulnerabilities. And by the way, when I say average, I took the median here because we have some enormous customers who will run hundreds of pen tests. The average is only 80 hours. For every HackerOne pen test, we provision an elite hacker for 40 hours of their time. So that's 2 hackers will find 13 vulnerabilities between them. 17% of all vulnerabilities found during a pen test are either high or critical. And in the last 12 months, HackerOne has launched 364 pen tests. So this is the single fastest growing area of the business. We've invested a lot of time and resource into this. As Laurie said earlier, we want this to be enterprise ready, that you can come, you can launch a pen test, you can clone a pen test, you can spin up a new one, or if you're an SMB and you need one next week, let's make that happen. So I just wanted to do a bit of a deep dive here into the individuals, and a couple of them are actually sat outside. So there are 2 million hackers now in HackerOne. I did the numbers for this. We have between 100 to 200 pen testers on our roster. So that's around about the top 0.01% of all hackers globally. But who are these folks? What do they do? Well, for those familiar with our platform, you see this reputational score here, 11,000, 10,000. They are the most accomplished hackers that we have in the community in terms of the number of vulnerabilities that they found. They're also extremely accurate. So on a scale of -1 to 7, 7 being a perfect accuracy score, you see where these folks are lying. So not only can they find bugs, we want them to be able to find high impact bugs. So you see that reflected there within their impact scores as well. So, okay, they can find bugs, but every time I speak to someone about this, there's always someone who's going to think, okay, fine, I'm okay with bug bounty, I'm okay with unauthenticated testing, with black box testing, but I'm going to give these folks intimate access to my systems. So we have preempted that. This elite cohort has been thoroughly background vetted. What you see here is actually a list of US-specific checks. And of course, our pen test roster is global. We localize these to the region that they reside. We actually use a partner to go through this first advantage. They will vet these hackers for us so that we know they are safe to touch your organizations. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick pause because I'm dying of thirst. I don't know how anyone else is doing here. What does PTAS mean? To me, it's really simple. If it's as a service, it needs to be on demand. It needs to react when I need it. So the self-service process is new. We launched this at the beginning of the year. And it means that, let's say you have a scope in mind. You have 2 web applications, a supporting API, and some mobile apps. Okay, great. When do you need that by? So you can log on to the platform. You can run through, give us some basic information with regards to the complexity of the assets, with regards to your testing requirements. Do you have geo-specific requirements? Do you have specific testing windows? You can launch that in the platform yourself. Okay, so as everyone here knows, it's wonderful to be told about vulnerabilities. What am I going to do with them? It's useless unless you actually go and fix them, right? The aim of the game is not to find bugs, it's to fix bugs. So HackerOne Pentests will report results in real time, like everything that we do. It'll be on the platform. Every single vulnerability found through a pen test will first go through our L1 triage. So a lot of you will have your own internal analyst. That's brilliant. We want to help you there. We want to help do some of the heavy lifting. So we'll validate all vulnerabilities. We'll reproduce them as well to make sure that it is actually legitimate. And we'll help rank them for you. As well, you are working with a remote pen test roster, so it's really important that you have a direct line of communication. We'll set up a Slack channel. You can message them, you can query them, anything that comes to mind, you can work with them directly as well. Amazing, okay. So, stage 3, bug bounty. Now, I almost take bug bounty for granted. I love talking about pen test. I was involved in it in a previous life, and code security audit is very exciting as a new development, but bug bounty, of course, is still immensely important. So stage 3, and this is not an order of priority, because when we think about how you implement bug bounty programs, we want them to be continuous, and we want them to cover all assets. If pen tests can focus on a subset of assets very, very deeply, we want bug bounty to cover everything. So why do you still need one? Okay, you've done your code security audit, you found 80 vulnerabilities. Great. You did a pen test, you've pen tested everything of your critical assets. You've got 100% coverage. Why would you need this? I think for me as well, we talk about continuous security testing. If we take a 2-year-old program in HackerOne, typically you might have somewhere in the region of 5,000 to 10,000 hackers. How can you possibly achieve that number of eyes on the glass without using bug bounty? So, every hacker on your program won't be testing every day. If 10% of that 10,000 tested you every day, you have 100 hackers looking at you at all times. So harnessing this global scale, and this is one of the things, we work very closely with a lot of Indian hackers. They are a huge cohort, but we have cohorts all over the world. Sometimes I'm not even sure why myself. We have a very developed community in Buenos Aires, Argentina. We have the Nairobi Hacking Club. We have, of course, massive contingents on the East and West Coast. But one of the biggest difficulties in security is the security talent gap. So, like everyone, I think the FT posted last week, there's somewhere between 2 to 3 million job vacancies in security. This is crazy, right? How can we possibly fill that? You have, through bug bounty, access to a global community. And as I keep on saying, covering all assets, I'll be honest, it's very unlikely, unless you are a major bank whose CISO and directors of security have been fighting for pen testing finance for the last 2 decades, you probably don't have enough budget to pen test everything. So use pen test to focus on your core assets and use bug bounty to cover everything. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about this customer of mine here, OKX. They're actually the 3rd largest cryptocurrency trading platform in the world. They're a great customer of ours. They use pen test, they use bug bounty, but they're really, really keen on bug bounty. To them, that was the most important thing. And of course, every single organization has their own set of unique requirements. But OKX came to us and they said, Chris, right, we're going to do a pen test, but can we actually launch our bug bounty first? I said, yeah, well, of course you can, but You know, do you need that? Well, they've been running pen tests for years frequently, so they've got great coverage already. Okay. But why don't we do a private launch for Bug Bounty first before you go public? They said, no, the reason we're doing Bug Bounty is because crypto, the entire world of crypto exists because of community. So showing our community that we are working with a community on security is absolutely key. And that was from a marketing perspective, from a trust building perspective. So within actually I need to get this right, I think it was 5 weeks, they went from a private program to a public program. I took the screenshot yesterday. 124 vulnerability reports received in the last 90 days. You know, for them, they pen test their core assets. They have literally hundreds of assets. The only way for them to achieve true scale is through Bug Bounty. And for all good Bug Bounty programs, you know, you may have limited resources, but I would like to think even the smallest teams, when they are mature enough, can aim for a public Bug Bounty like this. Okay, so how do we pull it all together? We've had code security audit, Pentest as a service, and Bug Bounty. Now, excuse me, I think what's really important is to be honest about a launch order. Run your code security audit. If you have the luxury, you don't have a gun to your head saying, please run a pen test next week or we're not releasing this product. If you can actually strategize about this, if you can sit down and think, okay, where can we work with HackerOne to deliver the most value? Honestly, for a lot of customers, it will be code security audit. Very, very few people have ever audited their entire code base. Let's be honest. So let's run that code security audit, but let's give time to remediate. There's no point running directly into a pen test without having spent the time to work with engineering, work with infrastructure, and fix the bugs. Then run your pen test. That'll be a 2-week window. And then, of course, give yourself time to remediate. Our pen tests, as standard, come with a 90-day remediation window. Your team might be superstars and fix that within a week, but give yourself time. Give yourself time to work with the results. And then you see here, I would always recommend, and this is for a new customer, by the way, someone who is not already running a program, go into a private Bug Bounty program. You're probably not an OKX, and you might not have an OKX's use case. If you do, fair enough. But run your private program, you know, flex the muscles of your own team. See how you process a large volume of vulnerability reports. See how your engineering team, you know, work with fixing that. And then the end goal is always to go public. What more of a powerful message can you give to your customer base, to your partners, that, hey, we're so confident in our security processes, anyone in the world can hack us. It's no small thing. So, unfortunately, I can't speak to you about specific customers. This is taken from a customer I worked with my colleague John back in July. So for the Gantt chart lovers of you, sorry, I do think this is quite ugly, but I know a lot of you might work with this. Here's what a security roadmap might look like. So set up that code audit, run the code audit, a 2-week window. Meanwhile, preparing your Bug Bounty program. Now, of course, listen, internal security resources are spread thin. This is a very ambitious program, but this program is real. We ran this, we pitched it to them in June, they loved it, and we went ahead in July. Now you'll see, for the hawk-eyed of those amongst you, the pen tests are not evenly spread. We have accounted for a change freeze across December. Let's be honest, that does happen. But what I'm looking at here is very carefully run a code audit, complete that, including my remediation window. Then prepare the soft launch for my Bug Bounty program. What that means is have my Bug Bounty ready to launch in terms of my policy, my scope, my rules of engagement. But don't invite hackers just yet. Then, when I'm setting up my Bug Bounty program, I'm working with the HackerOne team, run the pen test. And what I want to see from that first pen test is focusing on your critical assets. You might have great budget, you might not. What is important to you? Start with that and make sure that whatever you're pen testing, the assets, you don't put anything in your private Bug Bounty program that hasn't gone through a pen test. It could be with us, it could be with someone else. But what I would say is, in terms of best practices, You don't want to see someone putting a completely untested asset out for a bug bounty program. Then finally, and you can see if about 6 months here working towards a public bug bounty program, that was actually what this customer wanted to go with. Again, community was extremely important to them. Optics were extremely important to them. For most people, it will be around at least a year. For many customers of ours, they've actually stayed private for years, but hopefully working towards a public program. Now, just as a last point here, what does this actually look like? Well, here's a bundle, and this is the same bundle from the customer in July. They had 360 hours to cover their entire platform. That was their wallet, that was their supporting API, independent APIs, Android and iOS. So that was the entire platform was tested after we'd already gone through their code base. They had Go, TypeScript, Node.js. I'm sure many of you have a very similar stack. And then they launched a bug bounty program. They had the triage services, they had a program manager. And then this is what a very, very complete HackerOne 3-stage play looks like to me.